what else would you recommend educators look for in terms of knowledge-rich resources? We talked already about, like I said, retrieval.
Mhm.
What else should they look for?
So in terms of knowledge rich, there's four main sort of aspects that have been defined actually by not a researcher, but by a really fantastic educator in the UK who might be becoming more prominent in the United States now. It's Tom Sherrington, and he talks about four main principles in that. Their knowledge shouldn't just be something that's peripheral, that's something in the background. So the content of the curriculum material should actually provide a driving underpinning philosophy. So actually saying that giving students access to knowledge that helps to enrich and improve their own perspectives on their lives actually is a goal in and of itself, and is almost like a philosophy in that way. Basically saying that we don't want to develop generic skills. I think skills are best sort of taught in the context of very rich discussions about real topics and real ideas and things that don't necessarily change lesson by lesson. Like you might instead build upon a particular line of inquiry across many lessons. In some curricula the only thing that will connect lesson by lesson is a generic skill, say finding the main idea, or engaging in scientific inquiry, or setting up an experiment, or to use a civics example, like understanding what good citizenship is, for example, might be the thread. But that's quite a generic sort of outcome. What good curricula should do if they are knowledge rich is actually see knowledge as a driver of that thinking. It's not something that you don't use knowledge to then to sort of get better at creativity in a nutshell, or in a vacuum. Really, knowledge is the thing that allows us to become creative. Knowledge is the tools that allow students to become critical thinkers as well, because they read something and they say, hold on, I know something about this, and this author has left something out, or this author is talking from only one of these perspectives and I actually know about another perspective. So far from us being able to just tell students or model to students how to be creative or how to be critical thinkers, what a good knowledge-rich curriculum actually does is provide a lot of opportunity to learn rich content that then can be used as raw material to help with those meaningful, sometimes lofty, but meaningful goals within the curriculum documents. The other big sort of one in there, in terms of the other aspects of the curriculum, is that knowledge should be taught to be remembered and not just encountered. And that links directly to that idea that we talked about with the retrieval practice, is that we actually ensure that students master some knowledge, and that they don't just encounter it and so, oh, that was an interesting topic, never think about that again, but actually have an opportunity to really draw those connections and do these amazing teaching practices that come from a different part of the science of learning called generative learning theory, for example, where the goal is to give students tasks that force them in some ways to connect things that haven't been connected for them, and to generate maps or generate summaries or generate visuals or diagrams that essentially allow them to progress their own thinking and draw connections between different aspects of the curriculum. So we don't want to, a good curriculum will ensure that knowledge is a focus that's mastered, not just a sense of generic sort of skills. And the last one is that the knowledge is well structured. So we don't introduce concepts or facts or parts of history or scientific ideas or vocabulary, for example, without adequate background. So we actually are only introducing things that have almost been built up to this point. And that's where the idea of spiraling is really key. You might cover one topic in one grade level, for example, and into some level of detail. But the idea is the curriculum will circle back around onto that topic again in the way that sort of Brunner described, in a sort of a much more sort of abstract sense, if you want to talk about the education philosophers of old. But he did have that idea of the spiral curriculum being a good one. We do want to circle back to those topics, but then go into further detail, and then add the icing on the cake, or the flesh to the bones, that allows students to really understand something deeply. That doesn't happen by, changing the topic randomly one day and saying we're going to learn about something like this because we need to practice these skills that are over here in the curriculum documents. Instead, knowledge and the content of the learning from literature and science and history and geography and civics and all those areas can actually be the driver of that learning.